Hello, we're back. I'm Jenny Nowak with Plus One Supervision, and you are here because you are in our monthly supervision subscription web portal, and this training will be on how to use your hours tracker. Remember that you can watch these videos as many times as you need to, track your time in and time out on your hours tracker or on a piece of paper, and I'll show you how to get it to your hours tracker. So again, in your monthly subscription, over here on the left, there was your agenda, and now we're going to talk about your hours tracker. I recommend that you read all of this information every month because there's important kind of legal information here that you need to be reminded of, and we're going to get so into the clinical do's and don'ts that we might not always talk about these things. So number one, you should enter your hours daily into the tracker. Even if you can't fill out all the columns that I'm going to show you, you can write down what you did with a start and stop time. And it's very important to know that your monthly fieldwork verification form will not be signed if your tracker's not completed. Um, there's got to be proof that what I'm signing off on is what was done. So make sure that this monthly tracker gets completed. Okay. So you can click on here. It will take you to your tracker. I've got one pulled up, and we're just going to go over some of the highlights here and a quick demonstration. I know that first video was long, going over your agenda. I want this one to be a little bit shorter. So number one, there should be a header. This blue line, this row number one, there should always be a header. This is information that the board says we have to have. Your name, my name, where you're working, what type of supervision. I think that should be getting a little familiar now. It should be on every single document that we have. Then the board says you also must write down the date of the services, the initials of the client that you're providing services to, what activity you are doing, and the start and stop time of that activity. Now, the other thing is that this is what the board is going to look at if you get audited. And if you are audited, sorry, typo here, not sure what happened there. If you're audited, this is what's going to give them all the background information. So you really want this to be more detailed rather than less detailed. So if you're maybe a behavior technician and you see a kiddo from noon to 3 every day, you don't just write RBT activities here. You write down every activity that you did or every big topic goal that you are addressing. So it's not necessarily that we played with puzzles, but it's why did you play with puzzles? We were doing matching, or we played with Play-Doh. Well, great. Why did you play with Play-Doh? It was a highly preferred activity, and I was working on manding. So you would write manding with Play-Doh. But I digress. Let me go back to the structure of the form. So you will always put in the date, 11/13/25, the client's initials, and the code that we use. Write this down. First two letters of the first name, first two letters of the last name. So my client code would be Geno. Okay. The activity that we are going to do is hours tracking training, right? Our time in and time out. My time right now is going to be 7:24. And we'll come back later and fill the time in, the end time in. Okay, so these are non-negotiables. The other thing that the board says is non-negotiable is that we have to mark whether you're doing restricted hours, which is this first gray category, or implementation. And I talk about implementation as something that perhaps a high school student with maybe 20, 30, 40 hours of training and some instruction, very clear instruction from a supervisor, could come in and do. Direct implementation, no thinking about why am I doing this? How do I do this differently? Am I justifying that I'm doing it right? Am I tracking? None of that. This is simply somebody trained me how to do this, and I'm going to go implement maybe this training. I'm going to go implement the manding program. I'm going to go implement the matching program. Then that would go over here in restricted hours. Now, why restricted? These are called restricted because you are actually restricted on the amount of hours that you can gain under this category of activity. It is no more than 40% of your total. So if you're doing 2,000 hours, that means you have to have 1,200 in unrestricted and can have no more than 800 in restricted. And so on this total tracker over here, you'll see it says unrestricted hours and restricted. We will track this to make sure that this total does not go above 800 hours. Okay, but back over here. So implementation, restricted time. I'm not thinking about any of the why. I'm simply doing somebody else's program that they wrote to the best of my ability. And that's great. We should all know how to do that. The whole other side of this chart, you'll see this little pink row across the top, and row 2 is supposed to say unrestricted. I should maybe merge that cell and make that a little bit more clear. But these are the different activities that your Behavior Analyst Certification Board handbook for how to become a behavior analyst talks about on activities that a consultant would do that go in this unrestricted category. And I help you out with this. Okay, so those different activity categories that the board talks about are assessment, what's working, what's not working, program design. If I figured out what's not working, how do I fix it? If I figured out what is working for this manding program, and I want to take what's working over into, say, that matching program, and I think about how can I do that? That's called program design. All of the data that you're collecting, right, wrong, prompted, independent. How prompted, how many times prompted, error correction, no error correction, all of that data collection, that's an unrestricted activity. If you're overseeing people, maybe you are overseeing a parent who's coming in and running a program with you. Maybe you're a special ed teacher and you're overseeing the paraprofessionals in your classroom who are collecting data. Maybe you're a behavior specialist in a school system and you're overseeing a teacher implement some behavior strategy using a first then board or a token system. That would be overseeing people. If you're planning for a meeting, you have to go train a parent, a teacher, a paraprofessional, a behavior technician on how to do anything, and you are planning it using ABA strategies, you can count that planning time. If you're reading literature and completing a literature review form, you can count that time. If you're talking or training anybody, training that paraprofessional, training the parent, training a fellow behavior technician, that would go under talking and training. And then the board is very gracious and it says, you know, there must be something else that we can do ABA style that might count under the supervised time. So we're going to give you a miscellaneous or other category. There might be supervision homework assignments from Jenny, and you're like, I'm not really sure where to put this. Stick it under that miscellaneous category, that column M, that purple. And then any supervision meeting that we have. So we went over that schedule at the top of your agenda. All of those meetings should transfer over here. That is your responsibility because that is your time, even if it's permanent product review or your observation review. And it doesn't look like I have an agenda open. I'm just going to steal somebody's. If you come in here and you cut and paste these, all of these dates and times, and you cut and paste these, then you can take these over to the hours tracker and paste them right in here at the top or at the bottom, or you can just look at it and make sure that that time, that hour meeting transfers over here. Okay, so let's go over an example. I started this one here. Let's just check. Do you think this is something that a high school kid with maybe some training could implement this training on how to make this work? I'm going to say no. I have trainees of mine who in their first couple of months could not turn around and train somebody else how to make this form work. So I'm going to say no. This probably requires some special training on my part, definitely requires some practice on my part, definitely requires my board certified skills to be able to explain all of this information to you. So I am not going to put this under restricted. Now I'm going to try and figure out, where does it go? So there's nobody on the other side of me. So it's not likely that I'm assessing whether I'm doing this well or not, although Jenny's always assessing. So perhaps I could put some time that I'm trying to figure out, hey, did that go well or did it not? Did my technology work well or did it not? Was the background noise and the lighting okay so that I created a good product for my trainees or not? Um, I came in here and had to fix a typo. I don't know where that cell went. Welcome to Sheets, right? It had some weird number in there. So what was wrong with that? That was an assessment that I did. So maybe in this 20 minutes of this video, maybe 5 minutes of it is going to be assessment. It needs to be a decimal point. And you go, Jenny, what is that? Well, if you come over here to the side, there's a little chart and you go down 5 minutes is 0.08. Okay, don't think about it too hard. Just come back over here and put 0.08 in the box. Beautiful, that's 5 minutes. And then I had to figure out, wow, how am I going to fix that error? How am I going to fix that sing? How am I going to fix the lighting? How am I going to fix the background noise? And actually, I didn't spend much time doing any of it, so I'm not going to count anything there. Am I monitoring any data other than tracking my time? Not really, so I'm not going to put it in data. Am I overseeing people? Not really. Am I planning a meeting? No. Is there literature that I'm reading to you now to get this done? No. Am I talking and training? Yeah, absolutely. That sounds like what this is. Am I doing it ABA style with examples, with visuals, with all the information that you need to get the best out of this? I'm going to say yeah. So if we're going to spend, say, 20 minutes, let's just put a time on here, 7:24, 34, 44 to 7:44 p.m. That's 20 minutes, which should end up being 0.33. This should be 15 minutes if that was 5. So let's see if a 0.25, yay, look at that. And it came out to 0.33. Okay. If this side of the chart gives you headaches, don't worry about it initially. Your job is to come in over here and say on 113, this is what I did. This is the client. I'm going to describe the activity here. I'm going to put my time in and out. Then when you meet with your supervisor in session, we will go through and help you figure out what you were doing and where we should put that. Okay. There are also other samples in your, whatever this is, the workbook. There's the name, the sheet workbook. So there are always samples that give you ideas of what other people wrote in their activities and how they split them out. And I would say ask your supervisor. I have samples for this is like a Head Start early childhood teacher. I have a sample for a general ed teacher. I have a sample that's more for like an office manager doing the OBM, the organizational behavior management. So all of those samples, I can pull those for you. I don't put 20 samples in there because that gets a little overwhelming to you guys who are already a little bit overwhelmed. But so if you need a specific type of sample, let me know. And like I said, the biggest thing for you to focus on when you are getting started, let me go back over here, is to make sure that you are filling out these 4 columns for every activity that you do throughout your day. And remember, a client is anybody who is not related to you in any way or any thought of a way. So I don't recommend significant others, whether they're officially anything or not. But I don't I recommend you don't use a significant other as a client. But anybody who would benefit from the science and technology of ABA strategies can count. And that includes yourself. We will talk about self as client. So if you are going to track the amount of time that you exercise and whether you're tracking your exercise data and doing your exercise program well, it goes on here. If you do meal prepping and it takes 3 hours every Saturday, we're going to put meal prepping on here. If you do chores around the house, maybe you noticed that one of the samples said barn chores, and you're like, what is that? Well, the other trainee has a farm and has animals. And so these are things that have to get done every day. And so I will show you how to make yourself the client, how to do the task analysis, how to start collecting the time so that those 30 minutes of barn chores count. And we'll talk more about why that's important when we do your daily task video. Okay? So again, get something written down over here, time in, time out what you did, and your supervisor will help you fill out the rest of these columns. Okay? That is probably it for this training. Thank you again so much for joining me. Make sure that you log your time on your hours tracker that you watched this training and that you complete the kind of quiz question below that says, yes, I watched this. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.